Bien, eh bien bonsoir, chers amis, dear friends. Of course, we cannot see you all because of the virtual format of this session, but we are extremely pleased that you have joined us for this special webinar on the occasion of Veterans Day. As you know, France and the United States share a long friendship that was forged more than 230 years ago in Yorktown, Virginia. And this friendship was renewed many times, and especially during the two world wars. This, on the occasion of Veterans Day, we usually organize the French embassy and the French consulates all over the US. We organized ceremonies of awarding the Legion of Honor to veterans of the Second World War who have fought for the liberation of France. This year, due to the sanitary situation and the COVID, we've not been able to organize such events. But I have the great pleasure to welcome here Clément Horvath, who has joined us, even if he's joining us from France. So he has drunk a lot of coffee to be awake up so late. And Alexis Parker for the presentation of his book, Till Victory. I would like to thank the French Veterans of Texas, and Alexis is a member of the French Veterans of Texas, for giving us the idea of this webinar, and also the French-American Chamber of Commerce in Houston, who has helped us with the technical issues. Without further delay, I am pleased to give the floor to Alexis and Clément, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy a very lively presentation of a very interesting book about history by those who've made it. Alexis, c'est à vous.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. We're pleased to be here with you. Want to introduce Clément, who's a young French who has a passion for history and has somewhat stumbled upon this passion of collecting letters of soldiers in the European theater during World War II. He'll present to us his book, Till Victory, that is published in French so far. It's been a couple of years, and it was scheduled to be published in English in October, and due to some delays again, we're probably facing a publishing in December. So Clément, welcome to Houston. We'd like to have you in person, but please introduce yourself and let us know what your book is about and how you came about to write it.
Thank you very much, Lex. Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Clément Horvath. I'm 32 and half, and I live in the Loire Valley in France, that some of you may know for white wines and old castles. My father, it all started like this. My father took me to Colville-sur-Mer in Normandy when I was a kid. And we went to a huge cemetery that, you know, many of you probably have visited, with over 9,000 white crosses of American soldiers who stormed Homa Beach. And I didn't know about the war then, but it was pretty powerful introduction to that part of history. And since then, I was fascinated by history and what happened during that time. And I started collecting memorabilia. I think I started in 2003 or 2004. And like everyone, I started collecting, helmets and things like that. But I quickly shifted to letters because I wanted to know what men of my age then went through, or at least try to understand, because as a civilian, I guess you can never really truly understand what a soldier at the front can go through. But I wanted to understand a little bit, so that I could appreciate really what their sacrifice meant. And after 15 years of collecting letters, I had the idea. It was back in 2014 to. I had to do something with all of that, and I decided to write a book. Although I'm not a writer, a full-time writer, I'm not even a real historian. Like, I don't have the diploma, but I was so passionate, and I wanted to honor those veterans. So I spent about 4 years working on the book itself, but everything was already written because I had done so much research over the years. And I called it Till Victory because this is the signature one of the soldiers in the book used to let his wife know where he was. It was a coded message, actually. He used with love to let her know that he was in England, for example. And Till Victory was the code for Germany, that he was heading to Germany. And I thought it was a beautiful image, waiting for peace to come and the separation. So I decided to call the book Till Victory, and it was released in October 2018 in France. So after, I spent about a year translating the whole thing. It's a very big book. I can show it to you. It's 376 pages long. There are about 250,000 words, more than 1.5 million signs. Yeah, so that's that was a lot of work, and it was supposed to be released on October 30, but due to COVID and logistics problems, it was delayed a little bit. But it should be out by the end of the year, so it's coming very soon, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. Wanted to let the people know that if you have any questions, you're welcome to either raise the hand or put a question in the Q&A in the Q&A bubbles or chat room, and we'll pick up the questions and we'll pass them on. Actually, Clément will see them, and then we can discuss those questions. Clément, where would you start to introduce your book from a soldier's point of view, addressing the veterans community?
Well, I think it's mostly a book about peace, and it's I think it's very appealing to the general public that it doesn't know much about the Second World War, because there is some context, but also very emotional side to the book. It's not all about figures and dates. It's more about what these guys went through. What how it is on the front lines. The things that they wrote in their personal letters home. And so this is probably something that would speak to the veterans, and also to civilians like myself, who cannot imagine what it was like for them to be so far away from home and do all those things that may put an end to their dreams and future. So this is really my way of saying thank you to the veterans, and especially the ones in the book, because if they are in the book, it's because their letters went on eBay, and they are they never had a chance to tell their story. So this was my mission, to help them get the recognition they deserve.
Okay, so can you tell us a little more about, because you mentioned eBay, so how in our world, having our personal letters end up on eBay, that's kind of strange.
Yeah.
Can you develop on that idea of how you started your research and what came about during your research and how it started forming into this book?
Yeah, I was surprised as well to find personal letters sold on eBay, and because personally I would never part with this part of my family's history, but some of them they never had descendants, or they were just lost, and you never know how they end up on eBay. But this was important, I guess, to save them, save those letters and do something with them so that we could honor and they were not lost. And it's very complicated to work with letters because big problem with eBay is that the sellers they very frequently split groupings of letters for profit. So it's very hard to they're not that interested in history, most of them, and so it's very hard to research a soldier's life and story when you only have one piece of the puzzle. But sometimes I get very lucky in a way. Like I can show you what I'm working on right now. Actually, I had the chance of picking up more than 250 letters from the same man. He's an officer in the 4th Infantry Division, and his letters are fascinating. He had such an incredible career, and so I really want to honor him. So of course I go through different phases in my work. The first one being reading those letters with the utmost respect, because I don't know the man, and I have to respect the personal writings and everything. And then I have to research everything he did, put some context in the letters, and finally I need to reach out to his family, because I want to make sure that if he has descendants, they are okay with me publishing the letters. So I really have, a lot of respect. I do it. Yeah.
Okay. I think Alexis, our consul, has a question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had the chance to be in contact with some veterans who were still alive and who wrote those letters?
Just off, yeah, for this one, because there's a tome 2 that was just released in France, where there are more veterans that are still alive, but in the first tome there were only one, which was an exception, because there are a lot of people working with veterans, gathering their memoirs, and my work was different. I really wanted to give a voice to those who never told their stories. So this is a completely different approach, and this is not the same thing to interview a veteran who would recall things that happened 75 years ago, and a testimony that was written right in the middle of the battle. It's completely different, because of course memory can play tricks, and this is not the same. It's not the same kind of memoirs. It's very different. Of course, those letters were not supposed to be published when they were written. It was just personal correspondence. So they usually shared a lot more than veterans would do probably today. So and they are also beautiful objects in themselves. Like I have selected a few of those for you, like this one, for example. I don't know if you can see it well with the lights, but it's a letter that is dated June 5, 1944, written by an officer, a British officer, on D-Day. Just a little line on the boat before the big show. when you read everything in the papers tomorrow. It's incredible to see a piece of paper like this and just know that it took part on D-Day. So those are both incredible testimonies of what happened, and also pieces that could belong in a museum. So it's very different. Yeah.
I think what you could maybe you could share with us 1 or 2 pages of your book, so that the attendees can really have a look at the way you've presented those letters, because you've not only made those research, but you really always put them back into the context. So
sure.
If you could share.
Of course, I'll try to share my screen. It's my first time on Zoom, so can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the one of the first pages of the book. It's the table of contents. The book covers the whole war from the first year in 1939 until the summer of 45, with a little bit about the occupation. And this is a list of all the soldiers that are in the book. So they are American soldiers, of course, but also British soldiers, Canadians, French. There's one from New Zealand. And so, yes, you have the context, of course, because the letters in themselves, they need to, you need to know where the letter was written, in what situation, what, the soldier was doing at that time. So I wanted to have a book with a lot of illustration and original memorabilia, also mannequins with original uniforms. As you can see, some of the letters were very, very hard to decipher. Some handwritings, that was a big difficulty sometimes. So yeah, this is only the first part of the book, but there are a lot of men you see in different, I call them portraits. This is a 2-page spread, of course. There is this is the page on the left and the page on the right here. So yeah, this is what it looks like. That was only the first chapter. As I said, it's a big book.
Yes, well, you already answered Diane's question about how many, or are there letters from other soldiers than American soldiers? So you've answered that question by going up different nationalities.
Yeah, and I try to respect, the how do you call that? Percentages of,
their involvement or the proportion.
Yeah, proportions. Yeah. So there are a lot of American soldiers, but there are also soldiers from other nationalities. Those are just the ones, the list that are identified, because sometimes I couldn't find the family because there were no descendants left, or I just couldn't reach them. So I decided to preserve their, keep them anonymous, just using their first names and divisions. So that's a problem to me, because I really wanted to honor those people, but on the other side, on the other hand, I thought that we talked a lot today about the unknown soldier, and I thought that calling a soldier John is actually a good thing, because it might he might speak for all the Johns on the front lines. So but yeah, so among the anonymous ones, there are also a Polish soldier, there's an Australian soldier, a South African one. So yeah, there are a lot of all allied nations are represented in the book. Yeah,
including some of the Free French.
Yes, there is one officer, especially a very interesting story, who liberated Paris, and he writes about his joy in his letters. They're incredible. There's also a liaison officer who was in Italy. He fought in Monte Cassino. So this is there are a lot of French soldiers as well.
Okay. So maybe a little more personal question for you. Is there a particular soldier that you became attached to, or that his story made you closer to him, or that you felt you related more to that family or that situation?
Well, this is a very, very tricky question, because I became attached to almost all of them, but it's hard to pick one. But there are definitely, stories that really moved me. You have, of course, the soldiers who did incredible things, those who wrote very well or did funny drawings in their letters. But I think that the ones that struck me the most are the ones who didn't come back. I think there are about 15 of them in the book that were killed in action. And I can name a few. There are Jim and Vernon Miller, who were two Canadian airmen who volunteered at 18 years old and were killed in raids. Albert Vardy, also a Canadian airman as well. He was afraid of water, and his plane crashed in the sea, and he drowned. So it's a terrible fate. Just a few days before the end of the war. So you have all these letters that he wrote before his death. An American one also, Ronald Whitehead, who is still missing today. Actually, his plane was never found. Supposedly 7, because it was a bit earlier. Years later, he's still in command of his plane. So this is incredibly moving to read his letters and think about him, just thinking that he's still out there. And also you have the infantry, a young Archibald Stacey, who died 3 days before VE Day. So a lot of last letters as well, like I have a few ones here. They're incredible because, well, you see, like this one, for example, was written by a young British soldier, Leonard Wood, who was, you see his picture right here. This is the last letter he wrote in Normandy during the Battle of Villers-Bocage, and he was killed a few hours after writing it. And it was not even censored. It was just sent back with his personal belongings. So it's very, very moving to see that. And it's, so many soldiers had the same fate. Melvin wrote, this is probably one of the most moving pieces of the book. It's a Valentine card that was sent by his wife. They were just newlywed, and it just came back, with a return to sender stamp, and mention deceased. He was killed during the Ruhr crossings in Germany. So those are probably the ones that moved me the most. But you also have happy stories, or very peculiar ones, like Günther Half, for example, who was a German-born U.S. soldier. He was born in Germany, and he fought in Germany with the 95th Division. Those of you who saw the trailer, the video trailer, probably know him already. And it was very interesting because he wrote about the camps, concentration camps, and his views about the German people. So very interesting. So yeah, there are so many stories to choose from. It's a very hard question.
Would you have a sample letter, a short one that you could read
Sure.
for us, just to illustrate? And I know you do some podcasts as well, and I imagine you also present some snippets.
Yeah, I do. But there's one letter that I read very recently. It's in the pack of letters that I just got. So I cannot tell you the name of the soldier because I yet have to I still have to reach out to his family, but I can read one of his letters. It's very interesting because I think it sums up the whole point of my work. Trying to understand what these men went through. He wrote in a letter, "The whole difficulty seems to be that each new generation must find out for itself how dreadful, costly, and futile war is, instead of being able to profit by the knowledge gained by other generations who have also found out the truth to their great sorrow. This has been the Second World War in my lifetime, and I know those who fought in World War I hope never to see another. I know also that those of us who are fighting in this one hope never to see another. But it may be that there are too many people of all nations who do not actually live, fight, and witness actual combat conditions, and for that reason do not know it in all its horror. Maybe those who are left when this conflict is over will be able to work out a plan to end it for all time. Let me assure you that all the men and officers over here that I've talked with are determined to stay in the scrap until it is finished, no matter how long it takes. That is what we came over here to do, and none of us would think of leaving until the job is done." So this is a very, it's very interesting because, basically says that history repeats itself. If we don't try to understand how terrible war is, we forget and it starts again. So. And do you want another one? I have selected a few. Yes.
It's very humbling to listen to you read it. So.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Sit back, so everybody probably just got quiet.
Okay. I've selected another one if you want. It's quite different. It's from a Canadian officer, James McPherson, from the 3rd Canadian Division. Something he wrote just after he landed on Juno Beach. "I saw a French woman with her little girl gazing with shocked and saddened eyes at what had once been their home. The little girl was crying with fright. Suddenly, she stopped crying and ran laughing and pointing to a single huge pink rose, which somehow had escaped destruction and clung precariously to a shattered piece of fencing, all that was left of a once beautiful garden. And then the gun started, a whistle blew, and the column moved on. In those first hours of the invasion, we were initiated in a little of all that was to follow. The noise, the suffering, the prisoners, the violent death, the futility, the sacrifice, the destruction, and even the rare moments of beauty which come when the best in men, instead of the worst, is brought to the fore. And the sum of that is war."
This is very. We touched a little bit about how you felt while you were doing your research, and so I have a question. It may be a hard question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. But was there at one point an emotional charge to your work where you had to take a break, recenter yourself? Because it really appears that you're funneling all these letters into your process, and it's at some point, I would imagine it becomes overwhelming. May not, but that's the question. And how did you step back into the action of continuing your work?
I think when you do that kind of work, you need to keep your distance a little bit to protect yourself as well. And you have to respect the author of the letter. So you kind of keep your distance because it's very personal content. And of course I shed a few tears, but who wouldn't, when you read some of those letters, like Cortland Castor, who is a 9th Infantry Division soldier, who was killed near Saint-Lô. I have his last letter to his mother, where he just basically says that he misses her and that he wants to be home. And so it's very hard to read this kind of content. And it was very young. I think it was 19. So it's very, very moving. But it's also very interesting because these men were not, the image we have today of almost those Rambos, storming the beach with a knife in their, between their teeth. And they were not like that at all. They were young guys. Most of them probably, they just wanted to go home. And so when you read these kind of letters and when especially because you did the research about the context and what happened, the guy's story and everything, then you really realized what it takes to to liberate us, like the value of what they did and the value of peace.
Right. Interestingly enough, we have another question that segues from there. This is from Jean-Francois. I'm just going to read the question. It's pretty lengthy.
Yep.
Having been exposed to so many testimonies and having a deep understanding of what these women and men went through, how does this impact your own perception and the way you approach life? And do you feel today's society has an appreciation for 75 years of peace that we're benefiting from? Thank you very much, Jean-François.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, it puts, it helps put everything in perspective. Your own life, your own problems. Like everybody today is, suffering from lockdown, and some of them are even comparing it to World War II. Of course, it doesn't have anything to do with that. And so really, you start to appreciate the comfort, the freedom that you have, because a lot of people in my family had to fight in wars. My grandfather did Algeria and was almost killed in an ambush. My great-grandfather was a machine gunner in the trenches of World War I. I lost ancestors against the Prussians in the 1870 wars. Another grandfather was evacuated in Dunkirk, and my Hungarian grandfather was forced to bury Soviet soldiers, Red Army soldiers in Hungary when he was 13. So, I had a very easy life. I never had to fight for my land, to protect my land, and this is in history. It's a very rare thing for us French, because we were invaded so many times, and for 75 years now we live in peace. So this is precious thing that we have to preserve. So, and I think that a lot of people are, they know that, and they every year, if you go to Normandy, you see the celebrations. There are, hundreds of thousands of people coming there to welcome World War II veterans like rock stars. It's incredible to see that, very moving. And so I don't think that people are forgetting. And a lot of young people are actually doing similar work, honoring veterans, and I have a lot of friends doing similar projects, French friends. So no, I don't think that they are forgotten. I think that I don't think so.
All right. Would you like to add anything as far as your generation? You've seen, you're 32. You said. Would you like, if you had a message for your generation, that even though some youth are doing the work like you described, a lot of them seems that they're kind of disconnected from history. Is there anything that you would see or propose? I know your work is a great tool to dispatch that information and make it real and palpable for people. Do you think that there's anything else that could be done to sensitivité?
Yeah, I understand. I think it's just the way that we talk about history, because I was bored in classes, history class. I think that young people, they don't, they would never remember a date. They would mix up the First World War and the Second World War. And it's, if you present history through personal testimonies of people that were their age, I think they would be much more touched by those stories, and probably would have more interest in history and those events. So I think this is just a way of and this is why also, because I say it all the time, I'm not a historian, I'm just a history buff, and I wanted to share those stories in an entirely new way. So yeah, I think we just have to stop just talking about figures and dates, and more about the emotional part of the war. Yeah.
Okay. On your going back to a more logistical approach to your book, so can you explain how one chapter is built? So my understanding of the book is that you find a letter, you find the family, you situate that letter in the war theater, and then you also do some research on the unit. And then the implication of that unit and the movements, the strategical movements of those units. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, because like I said, it's the context is very important. The letter of the young British soldier that was killed, for example, it's just a love letter. But if you don't know that he was killed the next day, it's not the same story that is told, and of course you need to know, like for someone who never learned about the history of the Second World War, he needs a lot of information about where it was happening, what was happening, and everything. So I used a lot of context, and the actual letters content is probably around 30% of the book, probably a little bit more. The tome 2 was built in a very different way. There are more letters, and they are split sometimes, so that you follow the timeline of the war more precisely. Yeah, sometimes it's hard, because when you want to honor the career of a soldier, you need to speak about what he did in 1941, and then you have to talk about what he did in 1945. But it's a very big book, and you need to, talk about him in 2 different places in the book. So it's very tricky to, because I really wanted it to be read like a novel in some way. So I had a lot of issues like this. It was I spent a lot of time trying to trying different things, so that you were not lost with all the names, all the dates and everything, and really follow all the troops all the way from France, then North Africa, Italy, back to France, Holland and everything. So yeah, it was a bit tricky.
Okay, and so your book has received an award from the Stephen Byrne Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us how? This is also a question that Jean-François has. Can you tell us how the book was received in France? If you had, and I'm going to expand a little bit on that. Have you had some feedback from readers who wrote you or shared their experience with the book?
Yeah. So yeah, I had this award back in January. So 2020 wasn't all that bad. For those who don't know him, Stéphane Bern is a very famous TV host in France who specializes in history programs. And I got the history award from the hands of Stéphane Bern and Brigitte Macron, the First Lady, and Princess Caroline de Monaco. So that was a very strange day for a guy like me, who repeats all the time that, I'm not a historian. I had a little bit of, how do you call it?
Excitement?
No.
Humility? Surprise?
No, imposter syndrome. I think that's a word, when you feel like, yeah, do I really deserve it? And, but, I mean, it was 15 years of work. And like I said, I tried to do things differently. Like, I had some criticism about like the mannequins that you saw, because I used friends to portray some of the soldiers in the book instead of plastic mannequins. But still, it's still original uniforms that are displayed. I just wanted to. I wanted it to feel more real, and I tried to find people who actually looked like the soldier they were portraying, so that it was more immersive, But it's not, the usual way of doing things, and I don't like to do things the usual way. So. But Stéphane Bern actually really liked it because it was different, and this is a good way to reach out to younger generations. So, and yeah, I met a lot of people because I did a few signings here in France, and people seem to really love it, the book. So it's yeah, it's very humbling, and I'm really happy that people are enjoying it and reading all those stories that deserve to be read.
So the question is, are you going to do another book after this with the letters you showed us earlier?
There, like I said, there's a tome 2 in France. Well, I was a bit unlucky here because it was released the day before all the bookstores closed down. So due to COVID, so well, that's life. But yeah, I'll try to. Well, I haven't discussed it with the publisher yet, but I guess I have a little bit of free time these days. I can do webinars in the middle of the night, so I can probably start translating the tome 2 right away. So yeah, there are a lot more stories to be told. And I have this podcast also where I interview veterans and other historians as well. The last one was about how do you talk to a World War II veteran with a friend of mine, Florent, who interviewed 1,000 veterans all over the US. He's a French guy about my age. So, and the next one is part 2 of the interview of Tom Rice, who's 101st Airborne paratrooper who fought here in France and all the way to Belgium. So it's an incredible experience to talk to veterans. So yeah, right now this is what I'm working on. Okay. But I'm sure I have a lot more projects.
Now, these are more technical questions. So you're publishing in England in English, and in the States in December. How many books sold in France or in Europe?
The French first tome was more than 5,000 copies So this is a good this is good for a big book like this. It's not a pocket novel. So yeah, it was very well received. So it's great, and I hope it's it's gonna be released soon in English, because the families of the veterans in the book were incredible. They were so patient for years. I reached out to some of them 6 years ago, telling them that the book was gonna be out soon. I had no idea it would be in 2020. But yeah, it's coming soon, finally, at last, at long last. So they were very patient, and I can never thank them enough for their trust as well, because I have a huge responsibility, telling the stories of their fathers or grandfathers.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm going to give the word back to Alexis, and he's probably going to smoothly conclude and tell us more about his experience as well with veterans.
Don't worry, I'm not going to do a second webinar, so I will keep it short. But first of all, Clément, it has been really an amazing story that you've told us. We can only commend you for the quality of your work, for your modesty. Don't worry, you're not an imposter at all. No, I was a student in history, and I can tell you that your job, what you've done is really a very, very good thing. And I was very interested in your remark about the fact that there are testimonies, and your approach is different. Your approach is really to give this voice back to the ones who have lost it, either during the war or during or after the war, because they're already deceased. And I think this creates a very interesting approach, and it's very complementary to the first approach. Talking about testimony, indeed, for the past 3 years, as I mentioned, I've had this chance to present the Legion of Honor to veterans who had fought for the liberation of France, and it's always so amazing. Also, it's very interesting because when we start the process of families had never had the testimony from their parents, or and the fact that we tell them we are going to award you this Legion of Honor gives them the déclic, the willingness to talk about it. Some had already done so, some had even written books, but others, for the first time, they accept to talk about it again, because, as you mentioned, some of them have experienced dramatic things. And just to give one example, 3 years ago, I presented the Legion of Honor to a veteran of Hispanic origin, and at 17 years old, and it was the first time he was sent to Europe, and he liberated the concentration camps. And I just thought, this person has experienced the worst of Europe, the most inhuman view on Europe. And when I talked with him about that, he still had kept a very positive view of this continent, a positive view of us. He had then a family, and he was a very happy father and grandfather and great-great-grandfather. So this is what we can really get from your work, from their testimonies, from the work of other historians, which is that, as you mentioned in one of the letters, it's a pity that humans need wars to realize how awful it is. And today, we live at peace in Europe. Europe is at peace. It has been at peace for 75 years. And this is really the message of hope we can address. It's a very fragile treasure. We know that peace must be protected, must be cherished. And this is what we do on the occasion of Veterans Day, thanking the ones who have granted us this peace, and ensuring that we are all willing and determined to preserve this. Clément, merci encore. Alexis, the same. I would also like to thank Jen Buckner, Nadia Tessier, Aurore Artus, who all have contributed to the preparation of this webinar. One last question for you, Clément. Now that you are fully awake, what are you going to do tonight?
I'm going to bed now. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I have to go back to work tomorrow. So, but thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you to the French Consulate in Houston, Monsieur le Consul, Jane, Aurore, the French Veterans of Texas, the French American Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Lex, for putting us all in touch and your great questions. Thank you to the veterans, the families, and the people who took part in this webinar. It was a real pleasure for me to do that. So thank you very much for welcoming me.
Well, thank you. So just want to let people know the webinar was recorded, and so we'll follow up possibly with a way to see it or upload it somewhere to just spread the news about this great work.
Yeah, and if people want to have more information, they can go to tiltvictory.com. You have links to pre-order the books for the UK or the US or Canada, and also you can subscribe to the podcast Till Victory, a podcast about World War II and peace, which is on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, everywhere. So if you want any news, you can also follow me on Facebook, and I'll be delighted to talk to you. So do not hesitate.
All right.
Donc, bonne nuit, Clément, and enjoy the rest of the evening for the ones who are not going to bed right now. Merci encore. À bientôt.
Merci, au revoir.